Okay, so we're back. We're out here in the garage. I got the doors popped off, both those doors. One of them sitting up over there, and the other one is sitting here on some sawhorses. Don't know if you can see that. I've got it laying upside down. And the first thing to do is to take all the hardware off the door. So I'm just going to grab my drill and undo the handle here. And the hinges. I like to throw all of this stuff into a bucket so that I can recycle it all, since I'm replacing the hinges and the handles. You just grab the drill, back all the screws out. The reason I throw it into a bucket is just in case I need anything. I'm putting that together outside, and then later I can just dump the bucket into the recycling bin. I like buckets. Okay, so both hinges are off. The handle comes off kind of the same way. You just undo the two screws. No reason to show it too much care. Okay, so just toss it in there. And that piece. This piece right here, which pops out, my doors don't have these little mortises cut like a lot of doors do right here. Mine just had that little circle. So the new door handles that I have only have the mortise cut out right here. It turns out these old ones fit perfectly, so and they're a little bit higher quality than the ones that come with the replacement sets. So I'm just reusing these on all the doors. But for the most part, this stuff is just getting thrown out or recycled. Okay, there's a hook on the back of this door. We're going to unscrew, try to get rid of. There we go. Alright, just toss that in the bucket. So, the next thing I like to do is to sand the entire surface lightly. This isn't to remove the finish. This door has, I don't know, like a lacquer or some kind of whatnot on it. Who knows what the surface is. But the reason you want to sand the surface is to rough it up so that the primer will stick. The general process for painting the doors is to use a coat of primer and then 2 coats of paint. But to get the primer to stick really well, you just want to rough this gloss up. So there's a couple of ways to do that and a few schools of thought. Some people, I think, will use a chemical deglosser. I've used a little bit of that on the trim, and it seems to do okay. It didn't give me the warm fuzzies I got from just running some sandpaper over everything, so that's what I tend to do. So I'm not going to bore you with the whole process of sanding, but I'll show you a little bit of what I like to do. The first thing I like to do is to get into the panels here a little bit. So you want to just kind of rough this surface up along here, rough it up along here. These larger pieces I get with a power sander typically. I just put a sheet of 150 onto my big sander and run that over, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Let me grab a little piece of sandpaper. I'll show you how I've done these. I actually did the detail here on the panels while the door was still hanging up because it's warmer in the house this time of year, and I just kind of would rather be inside rather than outside. And it kind of cuts the prep time down, because prepping these doors takes a while. It takes, like, you know, conservatively maybe an hour a door after you get good at it. And it's just kind of boring work. So anything I can do to just cut that down by doing this ahead of time. I spent half an hour just hanging out in the house doing this a few days ago, and it's a little bit easier. But I'll redo this one so you can see it. So let me grab some paper. So for this task, I like to use a sheet of 150 grit sandpaper. This is wet dry paper, about this size. This is about 3 inches by 2 inches. What I like to do is fold it into 3 pieces, so that I've got 3 surfaces. I got this little surface here. It's about the same width as my panels. I can use the back, and then I can flip it like this. And I find that for each panel, 1 surface is about the right amount. So what I'll do is just adjust the camera here. Usually come in here, just kind of give it a rub. Once again, we're not trying to take the finish off or anything like that. Just trying to rough it up and get some scratches on it so the primer can stick. All these little scratches get filled by the paint, but you really want the paint to stick. So I just kind of run along, get the top, and then for the detail, same thing, just run your paper along there, like so. Try to get everywhere. I think it's okay if you, depending on the primer that you use, if you miss a spot or two, but I try to be pretty thorough. Just work my way around over here. Get into the corners really good. Get down on that detail. And just, once again, the goal is just to get some scratches in the surface. Okay? So like I said, I've done this on both sides of this door and the next door already, so you know, you don't need to sit and watch me for a half an hour doing this. Let me, let's see, what else is there to say about that? I want to do all 6 panels on one side of the door. Normally what I do is one side of the door at a time, so let me get my face in there. I sand these panels, sand everything flat, which we'll do next, and then caulk and fill holes. So let me pause for a second. I'll get the sander out, show you how to do the rest of the front. Okay, so I got the sander out. We'll talk about the gear here real quick, and then I'll show you how it works. So the first thing I have is a sanding block. This is just you can get one of these at Home Depot or you know, wherever you buy paint supplies for about $5. I've got it loaded up with some 150 grit sandpaper. I use this for smaller areas. This is my power sander. This is a Rockwell 505. It's a vibrating sander. Makes a lot of noise. This sander is pretty aggressive, and you know, they don't make them like this anymore. But I don't think you necessarily need a sander like this. This is just the best vibrating sander that I have. So it's the one I tend to use. It covers a lot of ground pretty quick. I can kind of round things out a little bit on the edges of the door here to make them nicer to deal with and have the paint spread a little easier. So I've got some 150 grit on this guy too. It takes a half a sheet. Normally what I like to do, I'm going to stand the camera back so it doesn't go flying off when I start vibing this thing. I try to sand all the panels first. So like I said, in what we just looked at, I do around the edges here on all of the panels, all 6 of them. On these ones here, let's see, the top ones are too small for my sander to get into, so I'll just come and rough those up kind of like this. Just once again, we're not trying to sand the finish off or anything. We're just trying to get some scratches on there, and you can probably see now that it's got, you know, pretty good, crap, there we go. Some scratches. We'll do the same thing on this one over here. You don't need to be too over the top with it, obviously, just once again trying to create some scratches so that the primer has something to stick to. Alright, so I'm going to put this over here, and then you can see how the power sanding goes. I'll go ahead and do the inside panels first, and then just around the edges. So notice that the order that I do them in is kind of the same order I paint in. The way that I like to paint is I start at the top panels here. I do these 2, and then I do these 2, and then I do these 2. And I try not to get too much paint spilled up on the edges because that tends to dry, and that's where you end up having smoothness problems. And then I come back and I do this strip here, and this strip, and this strip, but not past this edge if I can avoid it on either side. You paint that and you lay that off. You do this section here and this section here at the same time and lay that off. And then the bottom here, and then I paint this. What is this? Is this a styler rail? I can never remember once again. I paint this whole side, and then finally I finish up with this side. So I'll sand them in the same order, and maybe you want to do that too so you get into the habit of just doing things on your doors in that order. Okay, so here I go, power sanding. Take about a minute or 2. Okay, so there's all the panels. I really should go get a dust mask for this. Hold on just a sec.